ships of what could potentially become the second greatest source of them in the world. And as the Arctic continues to warm up, the sea ice across it will melt to a point where, eventually, potentially as early as next decade, there won't be any sea ice at all during the summer months, which will open up a new trade route known as the Northern Sea Route through the northern waters of Russia. This inevitability will dramatically shorten the trading distance that cargo containers will have to travel between East Asia on the one side and Europe and North America over on the other. It will dramatically speed up trading times between the economies of Eastern Asia and the West by a significant order of magnitude compared with contemporary trade routes between them through the Suez Canal or around the southern tip of Africa, and make the Russians a lot of money in the process as well via transiting fees. Sometime next decade, this is likely going to become one of the biggest and most vital trade routes in the world, and it will also independence is that the UK and NATO will lose their most strategically valuable submarine base. British and NATO subs will no longer be capable of rapidly accessing the GI-UK gap in the event of an emergency. And since Scotland and a potential United Ireland will both not likely be members of NATO, the entire southern flank of the GI-UK gap will fall under the fog of war to NATO intelligence, granting the Russian nuclear submarine fleet based in Kola an unprecedented ability to infiltrate through the gap and into the North Atlantic, where they can cause all kinds of chaos and damage to the West. It isn't just the threat of them being able to fire nuclear missiles at NATO targets from anywhere in the remote vastness of the Atlantic. The bigger risk is potentially the threat of Russian maritime sabotage to the dozens of critical undersea internet cables that span the Atlantic between North America and Europe. These are the cables that literally form the backbone of the global economy. They carry more than 95% of international data and more than $10 trillion worth of financial transfers every single day. The cables across the Atlantic are the most vital links between the two halves of the NATO alliance. And they are especially critical to the Europeans, because a majority of European data is stored within data centers across the United States, that then have to travel through these cables back to Europe. Without these cables, the internet as you know it and the connectivity that you're used to between the continents would simply not exist. And you'd have to just rely on satellites instead, which are significantly slower, less reliable, and more expensive to maintain. But the cables are also critical for the military and diplomatic institutions as well, as most military orders between the continents flow through these cables too. In 2008, a break in the undersea cables between Italy and Egypt directly caused military orders being sent to US forces in Iraq to drop. And American drone flights over Iraq immediately decreased.
All right, I want to start off by giving our praises to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shah, by Hashem, Rock Kakadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. Now, this is do a short video on the Atlantic Ocean, and you know how you got Scotland, which is down there up top of what is known as England, and you know Scotland and England and whatever makes up the two of the biggest parts of the Great Britain, all right? And they are talking about the dangers of Scotland leaves, the breaks apart, that Great Britain alliance, right? And one of the threats is it will give Russia, free range to the Atlantic Ocean, because our naval bases and things like that blocks Russia from just having free range goes through Scotland. But I wanted to show people, because a lot of people was wondering, if Russia shoot nukes, how it get here. And I believe a lot of people think that the nukes gotta fly all the way around the world a long way. And most people don't realize that the nukes would go from Russia directly over the Atlantic Ocean, straight down to Babylon the Great. All right. How short that route is. And you can see one of the other things they was talking about is the Atlantic Ocean thawing out enough to where regular ships can go through. Right now, Russia runs a tour to the North Pole, but they have to use nuclear powered ships that can bust through the ice. And most cargo ships are not them big nuclear powered ships that can do that. So But when the ocean thaws, it'll be a free trade route for Russia. Which they say like cut down times from getting from Asia to Africa and stuff greatly. And some strange reasons, ships don't really like to travel across the Pacific Ocean. They'll go Asia, go down around up under Africa, and then head to the Americas that way, versus going through the Pacific. So it's some kind of weird how these ships seem to stay away from the Pacific. But that's a different subject. But as you can see, um, you got Greenland, which is a very big continent. I think I'm gonna do another video going into Greenland and the Antarctic and some of the discoveries they have found there and what they could mean for society later, and what could be hidden in places like Greenland and the Antarctic. All right, now let's get through scriptures. All right, this is Job chapter 3, and I'm gonna start at verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare a war, wake up the mighty man, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords. So, take your farming equipment and make it into war equipment. And your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. And that's what we're starting to see. Some of these nations that were considered to be weak are starting to show their strength. Assemble yourselves and come all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about there. Cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. And we know that's some nukes. Alright. So the weak are beginning to say that they are strong. Alright. Now this is Genesis 47, verse 15. Alright, and this is going into the money fell in the economy crash. And when the money fell in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came into Joseph, saying, give us bread, for why should we die and perish, for the money filleth? Because when Russia opens up that trade route, if the Atlantic Ocean thaws out enough for them to send ships through, that is going to cause a lot of NATO nations, to lose a lot of money. Because wealth is transferred. Russia's going to take that wealth. All right. So that's going to help lead to the money failing and the economy breaking down. And then, I also help, that Revelation 6, 5, that black horse. All right. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see, thou hurt not the oil and the wine. So 2023 is looking more and more like it could be a tough year going into the economy. All right. And Revelations 18, 15. Because we just got to watch Russia and see what they do. Because Russia's trying to hurt Babylon the Great any way it can. And that's financially, or militarily. And eventually they're going to get mad. And this is what they're going to do. Revelations 18, verse 15. The merchants of these things which were made rich by her should stand afar for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing. So all these countries who have made all this money off Babylon the Great, they're going to stand far off, weeping and wailing, and saying, alas, alas, the great city that was clothed in fine linen, and in purple, and in scarlet, and decked with gold, and precious stones, and pearls. So, just looking beautiful. And that's how Babylon the Great, America, looks like a beautiful dream from afar. Verse 17, for in 1 hour such great riches has come to naught, and every shipmaster and all the companies of ships and sailors, and as many as traded by the sea stood afar off. So, and it's only going to take 1 hour for Babylon the Great to be destroyed. And the crowd, when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, "What city is like unto this great city?" So, what country is like Babylon the Great? What is um got this kind of greatness, this status? And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, the great city wherein we were made rich, all that had ships in the sea by reason for causeless, for in 1 hour is she made desolate. So 1 hour this place is going to be destroyed. Rejoice over her, thy heavens, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for Yahweh had avenged you on her. So this is the Lord, giving vengeance for what they had did, the transatlantic slave trade, manifest destiny, all that, they got to pay for that. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence should that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. So the Lord is saying that this place is going to go out with great violence. And with that, I'm going to say, Shalom.
Is that the UK and NATO will lose their most strategically valuable submarine base. British and NATO subs will no longer be capable of rapidly accessing the GI-UK gap in the event of an emergency. And since Scotland and a potential United Ireland will both not likely be members of NATO, the entire southern flank of the GI-UK gap will fall under the fog of war to NATO intelligence, granting the Russian nuclear submarine fleet based in Kola an unprecedented ability to infiltrate through the gap and into the North Atlantic, where they can cause all kinds of chaos and damage to the West. It isn't just the threat of them being able to fire nuclear missiles at NATO targets from anywhere in the remote vastness of the Atlantic. The bigger risk is potentially the threat of Russian maritime sabotage to the dozens of critical undersea internet cables that span the Atlantic between North America and Europe. These are the cables that literally form the backbone of the global economy. They carry more than 95% of international data and more than $10 trillion worth of financial transfers every single day. The cables across the Atlantic are the most vital links between the two halves of the NATO alliance. And they are especially critical to the Europeans, because a majority of European data is stored within data centers across the United States, that then have to travel through these cables back to Europe. Without these cables, the internet as you know it and the connectivity that you're used to between the continents would simply not exist. And you'd have to just rely on satellites instead, which are significantly slower, less reliable, and more expensive to maintain. But the cables are also critical for the military and diplomatic institutions as well, as most military orders between the continents flow through these cables too. In 2008, a break in the undersea cables between Italy and Egypt directly caused military orders being sent to US forces in Iraq to drop. And American drone flights over Iraq immediately decreased